Hi folks, my name is Aidan Coyne and this is going to be my discussion of the California School of Education lesson plan template. So the first thing we have to consider for this assignment is the difference between the California School of Education lesson plan template and the typical lesson plan that's available online. Okay, so I identified two key differences. The first one is going to be the level of specificity and detail that's available on the CSOE lesson plan template versus the free lesson plans that you tend to see online. The CSOE document is 8 pages long, so it's very thorough and it goes over every element of the class. So the beginning, the middle, and the end, it doesn't leave anything to chance. On the typical free lesson plan available online, they tend just to emphasize the content, state the need for a few examples, and then go over potential assignments. But the CSOE document has a lot more specifics than that. And specifically, and this goes into my second point, is it's a lot more holistic as well in its approach. So again, the average lesson plan is just going to focus on the content, but the CSOE document also goes into theories. Like, for example, using the constructivist theory of learning, which is going to be about how students make meaning themselves through discussion and experience, or perhaps the behaviorist model of education as well, which is more about how we can condition students to behave in appropriate and productive ways to learn within the classroom. And it's also going to mention things like Bloom's taxonomy, which is going to go over kind of the entire hierarchy of student learning, right? Going from the basics, which is remembering, through understanding, applying, analyzing, evaluating, and finally creating. So depending on where you're at within a certain chapter, you might be focusing on lower down rungs on the taxonomy, just making sure students know how to remember and recount the information, all the way through maybe toward the end of the chapter or the course, you might be having students create projects and really utilizing their higher senses of learning. Okay, so those are the two key differences, just the level of specificity and also kind of the theoretical approaches as well, not just the content. Then the second part of the assignment is to go over 3 things that might be challenging for us in terms of specifically using these lesson plan templates. So the first thing that I thought of when I looked over the lesson plan template was I think it could be quite tricky to make our objectives measurable. Okay, so I think as teachers, the objectives are always clear. Make sure students know the information, are able to analyze the information, and really maybe even give a creative twist to the information. But the challenge is we have to make sure that students can be measured on that, right? That's how we know if we're doing our jobs well as teachers. So for me, that's going to require a lot of thinking and reflecting on how to make the outcomes measurable, right? And that can be through assessments, it can be through coursework. There's a lot of ways to do that, but just making sure that I am thinking about that. The second one is to make sure that I'm accommodating diverse learners. So this is something that I'll always try to keep in mind, but I think there is a little bit of an art to this and not just a science, in the sense that all your students are going to be different. You might not know them as well as you think at first. So throughout the year, you're going to need some flexibility, right? And you also need to make sure that your lesson plans are varied. That way, there's always going to be a mix of different learning types within a class, and we need to make sure that you're accommodating all of those different types. And that sounds easy in theory, but it's going to be a little bit tricky sometimes in practice. And the last one is to make sure that the classroom is a place where students can appreciate maybe social and emotional growth, right? So I think, again, in theory, that sounds straightforward enough. We just need to make sure that our classrooms are places where students can feel safe, where they're included in the conversations, but they also need to have specific lesson plan objectives to make sure that's the case. Okay, so this has been my review of the CSOE lesson plan template. I hope you enjoyed it, and I look forward to looking and hearing the responses from my other classmates as well.